The instructional methods used to create effective e-lessons must guide the learner through the 3 stages of memory. That is, sensory, working, and long-term memory. This involves selecting the important information for lessons. It also involves allowing the working memory the rehearsal space needed to effectively process information. The ability of the student to successfully retrieve and transfer new knowledge and skills from their long-term memory is the goal of effective instructional design. The learner's selection process can be guided by instructional methods that direct the learner's attention. For example, with regard to using the Alison publishing tool, publishers must choose and display text carefully, highlight important words and phrases, and select images that reflect the subject matter. You can use the course Introduction to E-Learning Theory and Practice on the Alison website as a style guide. Do not overwhelm the learner with too much content on one page. Use different tab styles, that is, vertical, accordion, and horizontal, to vary the display and interactivity for the user. Spread out the content and allow plenty of space. This will make the content more appealing and digestible for the learner. See the Alison Publishing Tool training course and training videos on the Alison website to learn how to use the technical features of the platform. Publishers must ensure that the volume and complexity of the content presented is manageable for the learner. This means managing the cognitive load. As a rule, when it comes to e-learning, less is more. Course pages should minimize irrelevant and complex visuals, omit background music, and only use succinct text. This avoids overloading the learner's memory and allows them room to process information. Consider using assignments and tasks. E-lessons that include tasks, exercises, and assignments encourage the learner to spend more time investigating, thinking, and learning. This increases the chances that the learner will remember the material. The more time you spend doing something, the more likely you are to never forget it. For example, a practice task could be ask a sales representative to review product features and identify which of their clients are best suited to take advantage of a product upgrade. This assignment requires active processing of new product information in a way that links it with prior knowledge about a client. For successful learning transfer, e-lessons must incorporate effective retrieval hooks that is memorable content that the learner will remember. Practical examples, exercises, and multimedia should be used. For example, an exercise may give an equipment failure scenario and ask a technician to select a troubleshooting action based on facts about a new software system. The troubleshooting exercise asks the learner to apply knowledge and skills in a practical situation. A course goal, for example, improving customer service response times, provides an initial definition of course content and a focus for the course design and layout. Content analysis is a critical step in the instructional design process. If the publisher does not include accurate and relevant content, there is little value in using the best instructional techniques. Content identification and analysis can be achieved by using task analysis and topic analysis. For more information, see the video Understanding Task Analysis and Topic Analysis. Visual tools such as mind maps, concept maps, or process diagrams can be used by the publisher to help clarify the connections among the different elements. Mind maps can be used to visualize and organize ideas. They can represent words, ideas, tasks, or other items linked to and arranged around a central idea. Concept maps and causal maps are diagrams used to illustrate connections among concepts and cause and effect relationships. Process diagrams are used to represent the flow of processes. There are 6 main types of course content: facts, procedures, concepts, principles, interpersonal skills, and attitudes. Facts represent specific information that answers questions such as who, where, what, how, and when. Facts can be shown, exhibited, or indicated. Examples include data, lists, and historical events. Procedures are a series of clearly defined steps aimed at performing a task. Procedures answer the question, how to do something. For example, instructions for creating a table in Microsoft Word. Concepts are a group of objects, entities, or ideas that are defined by a single word. They require definition. Concepts answer the question, what is something? For example, what is the concept of marriage? A principle or rule describes a relationship between concepts. For example, price increases as supply decreases. An economic principle. Some principles can be translated into strategic guidelines which guide decisions and tasks. For example, what are the guidelines for dealing with price volatility? An economic issue. Interpersonal skills are verbal and nonverbal skills that are useful for interacting with people. For example, course content may include topics relating to negotiation or solving group conflicts. Attitudes are a predisposition to certain behaviors. For example, course content may be included that relates to promoting the urgency to adopt attitudes for limiting the effects of climate change. Whoever is in charge of developing the content for e-lessons should first of all refer to the course outline or plan. This will inform them about the relevant topics to cover and the approach to take. Factors to consider are the level of detail required, the type of language to use, whether concepts will be illustrated using visuals, examples, or case studies. Before developing content for a lesson, review the proposed learning outcomes. Ensure that the content, exercises, and assessment material matches the learning outcomes. Provide all the content needed to match the learning outcomes. Make sure to include information that may be obvious to you, but may not be obvious to learners. Use examples that are likely to be familiar to the audience. Classify subject matter as must know or nice to know. Authoring content for e-lessons is not the same as writing books or scientific articles. The following tips on language style are useful when authoring content for e-lessons. Write simply, directly, and clearly. Avoid using jargon. Write as you talk. Keep sentences short and to the point. One rule of thumb is that a sentence should be no longer than 25 words. It is important not to give the reader more information than they can process at any one time. Informal language and contractions, for example, don't, we're, etc., can be used. However, a certain level of formality is expected. If you are addressing a multicultural audience, try to avoid culture-specific examples, colloquialisms, and slang. Be aware that some learners may not be native English speakers. Minimize the use of compound sentences. See if a sentence could be made more simple by breaking it into shorter sentences. Tips on language style. Use personal pronouns, for example, you, we, and they. Use the active voice to personalize instruction where this is appropriate. This addresses and involves the learner more. Use bulleted lists rather than long sentences and paragraphs to present concise information. Spell out acronyms in full the first time they are used. Consider adding a glossary of terms if many terms are used. For each lesson, the instructor should do the following. Review the content that needs to be published. Select the instructional technique that is most appropriate to presenting the type of content. For example, storytelling, scenario-based approach, or demonstration practice. Determine the sequence of the content and lessons. A storyboard can be used to organize the content into a sequence of slides, which corresponds to the pages in the final course. The standard structure of an e-learning lesson reflects Gagne's 9 effects of instruction. These are number 1, gain attention. Number 2, inform the learner of the learning outcomes. Number 3, stimulate the recall of any relevant prior knowledge. Number 4, present the material. Number 5, provide guidance or instructions for learning. Number 6, elicit performance. Number 7, provide feedback where appropriate. Number 8, assess knowledge or performance. Number 9, enhance the retention and transfer of learning. Let's review a lesson's components in more detail. Number 1, the learning outcomes. The first topic in each module of an Alison course should contain a slide containing a clear and informal description of the learning outcomes for the module. Number 2, an introduction. There should be one or more introductory pages describing how the knowledge gained from the course can be used and the benefits of having that knowledge. The purpose of having an introduction is to inform learners of the outcomes and motivate them to proceed with the course. Number 3, content. This is the core of the lesson. This is a set of screens, for example 4 to 25, which make up the core lesson content. These can include text, images, and multimedia. The instructional content should include examples, tasks, assignments, and practice questions. The fourth and final component of an e-lesson is the summary. The last topic in each module of an Alison course should contain a number of slides containing a summary of the key learning points or takeaways from the module. The purpose of the summary is to help the learner to remember the important information. Publishers can choose diverse techniques for presenting content, depending on the type of content and the learning outcomes required. A number of instructional techniques can be used, such as storytelling, scenario-based approach, toolkit method, and the demonstration practice method. Storytelling provides information through a story narrative style. This method places content in a realistic context, illustrating decisions and actions by one or more characters. The storytelling approach can use illustrations, pictures, and video sequences. It can be useful for providing job-specific knowledge and to describe complex processes where different characters perform different actions. A story can clarify who does what and can help learners to follow the flow of events. Storytelling adds a human aspect to lessons where learners can follow the stories of real people. It can also highlight the usefulness of practical application of learning and show how knowledge can be integrated into real-life situations. Tips on storytelling. Create a realistic and credible context. This can be important for motivating learners as it enables them to identify with the characters in the story. Learners need to feel that the story is similar to their own experience and that the challenges faced by the characters could also happen in real life. This can help them to appreciate the usefulness of the knowledge that is presented and may help them to remember. Characters do not need to be present in every screen in the storytelling method. Story screens can show character actions and dialogue. They can be alternated with theory screens, that is, screens providing concepts and guidelines. Story screens can be used to focus the learner's attention on specific issues. For example, they can be used to introduce a new topic, problem, or task that the characters have to address. This can be followed by a number of theory screens that discuss the topic further. Story screens can be used to introduce the next topic. A story screen can be used to ask the learner to answer questions about the story. Try to make the dialogue realistic by keeping sentences short and using informal language. Complex explanations should be provided in theory screens rather than in storytelling or situation screens. Lessons built using a scenario-based approach typically revolve around a real-life scenario. For example, a challenge situation in which learners are required to make decisions by choosing from different options. Learners are provided with all the necessary information required to make the correct decision. Feedback is provided to learners to explain why their choices are correct or incorrect and to show the consequences of their decisions. The scenario-based approach helps learners to learn strategic principles by applying them in practical situations and observing the consequences of their decisions. The scenario-based approach can be useful for developing problem-solving and interpersonal skills, teaching strategic principles rather than just factual knowledge, providing an interactive exercise at the end of a topic as a practice exercise. Tips on using the scenario-based approach. Think about how learners can use the information in a lesson and build a particular scenario around that. If necessary, use a subject matter expert or SME to ensure that the scenario is relevant. Try to understand which decisions a person would be likely to make in a particular scenario. SMEs can share experiences and possible outcomes. Provide learners with only the information that is required to learn. Do not include extraneous content. Note: the Alison Publisher tool is not designed to create animated characters and backgrounds, so creating such features as images may be time-consuming. An e-lesson can take the form of a toolkit which allows learners to select from among a set of topics rather than follow a sequential approach. A sequential approach may not be necessary if individual topics can stand alone. Consequently, learners can progress through a course in a sequence of their own choosing. Note: in Alison courses, all topics must be completed in order to successfully complete a course. The demonstration practice method is used to teach procedures, for example, software procedures. The procedure is demonstrated first, then the learner is asked to practice the procedure. As practice simulations are not possible in the Alison Publisher tool, video tutorials can be accompanied by verbal explanations in the form of written text or audio commentary, and assessment questions can be used. Adding examples is key to ensuring that learners can make sense of concepts. Examples can be used in deductive and inductive ways. Deductive examples are used to illustrate a concept or show the steps of a procedure which has been previously introduced. Inductive examples are used to stimulate thinking and reflection before providing definitions and principles. Deductive sequences reflect a behavioral approach which emphasizes response strengthening. Inductive sequences reflect a constructive approach where the emphasis is on the active processes learners use to build new knowledge. Examples help to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Learners can be given an example of how to complete a task, together with an explanation of the underlying procedures or principles. Afterwards, they can be asked to answer questions about the examples. This will stimulate their thinking, aid their memory, and prepare them for reproduction. Tips for developing examples. Use different media types to present examples, that is, text, images, audio, or video. If the example is long or complex, break it down into smaller parts. Try to use non-examples, that is, examples of incorrect principles and procedures. Use realistic job contexts where possible. This will support the effective transfer of learning. Various media elements can be used and combined to create compelling e-lessons. Such media includes text, images, audio, and video. However, be careful not to overload the learner's working memory when integrating media into course pages. Media should be used to support the learning process and should not be a distraction from it. Use media elements purposefully and intentionally, making sure they provide a practical learning dividend. Written text is an important media element for communicating information. Careful attention needs to be given to its display and its integration with other elements on the page. The following principles apply when displaying text on a lesson page. Display on-screen text to provide the best readability and clarity. Use diagrams, graphs, and charts where necessary to reinforce concepts. Use lists and tables to organize and present information in a user-friendly format. Use small paragraphs and allow whitespace so as not to overload the learner's working memory. Separate items into different sections using tabs, modals, tables, and lists so that adequate attention can be paid to the important information and the learner has time to process it. Use double-line spacing where necessary to avoid large paragraphs and overcompacted text. Graphics and images include illustrations, pictures, diagrams, and icons. These can range from realistic photographs to abstract images. Graphics play an important role in teaching and learning. As the saying goes, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Images can be used to make a point without the need for writing extra text. Attention needs to be paid to how the images appear. That is, they need to look good on a page in terms of color, size, resolution, and shape. Remember to always use public domain or copyright-free images in Alison courses. Otherwise, you, as the publisher, may be liable for copyright infringement. As well as complementing text, images provide style and decoration on pages, especially if lots of text is used. Tips on using graphics. Avoid unnecessary or distracting images. Always use images that are relevant to the text. Place the images close to the text and other media elements, for example audio and video, to which they refer. Ensure that the image size and appearance fits well with the other elements on the page. Try to use animated characters in images rather than realistic photographs, as this style works better for e-learning courses. Graphic representations, such as matrices, maps, and diagrams, can effectively illustrate information and data. However, always include a legend or text explanation with such media. A matrix, conceptual map, or tree diagram can be used to represent ideas, concepts, and relationships. Line charts demonstrate trends and allow learners to make comparisons. Bar charts are useful for comparing quantities and statistics. Pie charts represent proportions and ratios. Flow charts describe complex procedures in an easy-to-understand format. Diagrams provide organization and meaning for concepts and ideas. When developing a text table, ensure that sequential relationships are accurate. Arrange sequences left to right and top to bottom. Working contrary to that natural flow can create confusion. When using a complex information table, provide instructions on how to use and interpret the table. Effective use of audio stimulates interest and promotes learning. Audio can be used in combination with text and other media elements to expand upon, clarify, and summarize information. Tips on using audio. Make the audio clear and short. Use it to complement the visual elements on the screen. If you're using audio to comment on graphics, animations, or silent videos, make sure to present the audio commentary with the visual media at the same time. Don't use audio to read text on the screen. The text can be read visually. Avoid extraneous audio such as background sounds and music, which may be a distraction to the narration. Video makes it possible to depict and illustrate behavior, processes, and procedures. It can be effectively used as an instructional technique in storytelling, scenarios, demonstration practice, and in case studies. Tasks can be given to learners to analyze video content and extract and use the information. It is also effective for the retrieval of knowledge and the transfer of learning. Avoid using videos that only show people speaking. Sound can be played by audio. Video sequences should be accompanied with explanatory text to inform learners of what to expect and to clarify information that may not be clear in the video. This concludes the video tutorial on designing effective e-lessons, part of the e-learning theory and practice series.